All right. Hey, first up, we got Tom Pennigo. Let me introduce you. Big hand.
So the idea here is we're going to show you some quick Christmas presents that you can make and give out as gifts. And I'm going to do 2 of them, and we're going to need to zoom in on this table in a minute. So the first thing, and I'll pass them around, are kaleidoscopes. And these are, they're officially called Egoscopes. I don't know if you can zoom in on those.
Yep.
So you can buy the kaleidoscope kits at Craft Supply, New Penn State, a variety of places will sell them. In my opinion, they got really expensive. They're up to like $15, $16, $17 a piece. So if you're going to make 10 of them, it gets expensive. I have found a source that they are identical kits from China that are quite a bit cheaper. So if you want to buy some, you can talk to me or go to Craft Supply or whatever. So I was going to, there's 2 types. This is the Egoscope type, and this type is the glitter wand type. And so you just don't have to do anything. You just hold in the water and the stuff goes down through it. And so I'm going to pass these around, and you can take a look through them. Well, I didn't ever think of that, Joe, but I'm funny you would say that. I also want to pass around, these are what the kits look like. One is a glitter wand kit, and one is a kaleidoscope kit. Turning them is really simple. It takes longer to assemble them. And if you are going to do this, let me know, because there's a few tricks to the assembly that I've learned over the years. They use what are called front-facing mirrors. So unlike the mirror in your bathroom where you have the glass and the silver on the back of the mirror, these have the silver on the front of the mirror. And what I learned is, and at least in these kits, there's a thin film over the mirror, and I assembled a lot of them before somebody said, "What's this?" And I pulled it off and said, "I've been doing it wrong for a while." So anyway, you need to do that. And then to get all 3 mirrors lined up perfectly there's a few tricks to doing that too. To turn it, all you do really is start with a block like this. You drill I think it's a 9/16 hole through it, and all we're going to do is make this out of it. Both of these kits use exactly the same wood, the same size. The critical dimension here is this dimension. If you make it too thin, the kaleidoscope will be, or too short, the kaleidoscope will spin inside here. If you make it too short, you can't tighten it up on it. So it's got to be 2 1/4 inch, like 2.250 inches, okay? So I'm going to just show you how I turn these. My setup here is, because I don't care, the hole can wander or be a bit off center, so you don't want to line up on the center of the block. You want to center on the hole. So I have my drive here is just I don't know, can you see this, Doug?
Yeah.
This is just a Morse taper and a solid point. And this one here is a live center to a point. So whenever I finish turning this, I know I'm going to be concentric with the holes.
Explain the center again. We just checked that other end. You said something about the live center and repeat.
Okay, sorry if I'm going too fast. Okay, it's important that when you turn it, it's concentric with these 2 holes. It's not the center of the wood. So if you were to just draw lines on it and do a center, that would, maybe your hole isn't dead center. What you want to do is line it up between the 2 holes so that when you're done, the piece of wood is concentric with your holes. Because sometimes your drill can wander a little bit. Sometimes you don't get it dead center when you're drilling it. So I just put it between the centers. I don't have to cut anything off when I'm done with it. Any questions so far? I'm using a roughing spindle gouge here. Okay, so now I've got it round. Now I'm going to go in here and start shaping it. Now I'm going to go to a spindle gouge. You want to make sure these ends are small enough so that they fit into the kit, but not so small that you shorten the piece of wood. Somewhere around here. So what I want to do is, can you see this? I'm going to put this piece in here, take my glasses off, and see if I have, I got to take just, I don't know if you can see this or not. Where's the camera? I have just a little nib here, so a little bit off on that end.
Hold it over the centers of the blade.
Just a little bit over that. So I have just a little piece of wood there. Okay, so I just have to touch it just a skosh without shortening it. Okay, then I'm going to put a band on it. Why do you always put 2 bands on it, not 3? Because if you put 3, you got to make them sure they're the same distance apart. If you only put 2, it doesn't really matter. So now I'm going to burn in those bands. Now, if you did this with a skew, you could probably get a lot better finish with it, but that's not the way I roll. I don't want threads on it either. So when I'm really rolling, I can do about 18 of these an hour. And I just had a lady ask me for 300 of them. And I said, and she wanted them in 2 weeks. And I said, well, that's not going to happen. But so this is this is called Grand Rapids Grit. It's just a combination of boiled linseed oil, beeswax, and diatomaceous earth. And then once that's done, I wipe off the excess, put some beeswax on it, buff the beeswax, and I'm done. Diatomaceous earth. It's a food for plants, and you can get it at Home Depot in a big bag, more than you'll ever use. And we can pass this around. I mean, it's still warm, but
Ron, did you say where you got your cheaper turning kits?
where I got what?
Cheaper ones, where you source those?
Craft Supply and New Pen does.
What about, you said you have one that's much more affordable?
I can't sell it to you in this building, but if you see me, I can sell you one, or 10, or 50. Okay?
What kind of wood is this?
I think it's bloodwood, actually. Well, okay, so I can do 18 an hour of these things, turning them, and I'm really cranking them out. But I can only assemble about 9 an hour, because it takes you 5 minutes to open all the packaging, because all the pieces are in separate little plastic bags. And then once you get them all laid out, then you can reassemble them, and then you test them, and sometimes you've made a mistake or whatever, and then you got to fix that. So anyway, it takes 10 minutes or so to assemble it, and there's instructions that you can buy when you buy it from one of these places, but instructions are translated from Chinese, and they don't explain a lot. So if you're going to do that, let me know, and I can walk you through assembling them. Okay, any questions on kaleidoscopes? Yeah. Yeah, they are. They're inside the tube. Okay? First time I opened one, I said, "Oh, they forgot the mirrors," and then they fell out of the tube. So. Whoop.
Excuse me, what was the point tool you used for the bands?
The point tool that you used where you did the wire burning.
Well, this is one of, let's see, it comes from Carter Products. It's just a detail gouge with a carbide point in it.
Excellent, thank you.
We have a question here that's not.
Yes, sir. What was the question?
If you go down to the automotive store, they got these pieces that you put over your mirrors you've got an open mirror, you can just stick it on there. Those are first surface mirrors, and you can use those in the kaleidoscope.
You can, but you got to cut them. You know, that's no small feat. I don't really know how to cut glass that accurately. Oh.
Bob, could you repeat some of
So-
that for us?
So George is saying, for you who can't hear him, that you can go to Automotive Supply and buy a front surface mirrors that have a plastic backing that you can cut with the scissors, and then you can use those as mirrors, right? Okay. And he's done it, and they worked excellent. And he's going to bring it in on Show and Tell next week and show everybody. The second quick gift I did is only because my niece, or I guess she's my niece, saw this and said, "Can I make it?" And it turned out, that's the wrong thing. It turned out to be really quick to make. These are little candle holders, and you can pass those around. They're really quick to make, and some people, I mean, I don't think they're kind of more like folk art than a great finished museum quality piece, but some people have really liked them. So. I don't mark the centers on these, and sometimes the centers are way off, and that's good because then they get kind of a floppy looking rim to them. This happens to be walnut.
A quick comment here, somebody just mentioned with these rags, with that BLO, you gotta be careful disposing of rain.
Please say,
Be careful throwing those rags away when you use that.
this stuff? This is not flammable. Well, if it is, no. Well, hasn't yet. Okay, what was I gonna do next? This. What? It has boiled linseed oil in it, but that's not very flammable stuff, and it doesn't, you know, it's as a paste, so I don't think that would be a problem.
When it oxidizes, it's exothermic, so if there's rags crumpled up and insulated stuff put over them, they can spontaneously combust.
Okay, I've never felt it warm or anything else, but I think you should be careful with it, sure.
Lay them on the floor and let them dry before you throw them in the wastebasket. Bring them to your friend's house.
I mean, that's no joke. A friend of mine he's a professional painter, and he had laid out all his rags, and a guy came in and was cleaning and swept them all into a pile, and his whole shop burned down, so it's not a joke. Okay. You always stand out of the way when you turn it on. We don't want to go that fast here.
How fast are you at the moment?
I'm about 800. So I'm going to use a Badan here, or Badan, or whatever it is. All I'm doing is getting it so it'll fit in a chuck. Now, I didn't put a dovetail on what's going to fit in the chuck, but I could have, it would have been okay to do it, but it's really not needed because you'll see that I am never leaving the end unsupported.
That branch you're using, that's fairly recent cut?
No, this one is pretty dry, but you can use green, and if you get a crack, you get a crack, and you know, it's part of the art. Yeah, that's a good way of saying it.
Actually came from Mark Adams. That
Piece of Mark Adams. I don't,
the school, Mark Adams, is where I got that.
okay.
2 years ago, so it's at least 2 years dry.
Actually, greener is better because the bark will start coming off on you. So one of the things you want to do here is, now that you've turned a little bit of it, is before you tighten your chuck up, make sure that the center is going in the same spot, which it is, but if it wasn't, you could move it in the chuck a little bit and then tighten the chuck up. Otherwise, you know, basically it's got new centers. Okay. So this is a 1/2 inch bowl gouge, and actually I kind of messed up here. I really didn't need to do that. Next thing I'm going to do is drill a hole for the tea light candle. Whatever a tea candle is, I think it's 1.5 or something like that. After a while, you know how far to go in, but you can test it if you don't believe that's the right one. So it's still supported, so it's not going to come out of the chuck because it's supported. Everybody with me so far? I'm going about 1,200. And the idea is to get a little indentation here so that the wax won't come out of the candle. And look, I lost a big chunk of my bark. Huh. Well, don't do it with dry wood then. Now I'm doing a side. So we might as well just take the rest of it off at this point. Yeah, it feels good enough. This is not an exact science or anything like that. trying to make it somewhat spherical here. One of the things I've noticed is that once you put these lines on it, the lack of how good a sphere it is, your attention is drawn to the line, not to how good the sphere is. So you can see it's not quite right, but so I start with, Doug says he doesn't have any 80 grit, but I have a lot of 80 grit in my shop. This is a cutoff tool. I'm not going to cut it off. I'm just going to, so when I sand it, it'll go right down to the edge. Otherwise, you can get, when you do cut it off, you'll get fibers and so on at the edge. That doesn't sound good. I guess I'm going to leave that in. So I don't know if you've ever seen this. This is called Mylan's friction polish. And it's a real quick and dirty way to get a nice finish. It doesn't last forever, but you just have it going at high speed, and the higher it is, the more friction you get, the nicer the shine you get. So at that point, I would saw it off, and then I would sand the bottom on a belt sander. Pass it around. I'm done.
Okay, my name is Tom Sampson. I'm the club newsletter editor, so just putting in a pitch, and if you have anything you want to add or pictures or anything like that, I'm the guy to send them to. I'm also a mentor up in Belmont, so between Grand Rapids and Rockford. So if you're in that area, you want to turn a Christmas tree. Recently retired, so I'll be available. You know, I think I was busier the first week of retirement than I was, you know, okay, do all these house repairs and so quick multi-axis project. I offset or multi-axis Christmas tree. I was calling them wonky trees. Dave and I were turning out at Fallsburg a year or two ago, and that's kind of where it started. But I'll pass one around. That's a Home Alone Christmas tree. Where do you, if I want to show my tools, where should I be?
Show them like under the light.
Right there.
Show them there.
Okay, tools I have are a 40/40 gouge. So the bevel's 40, you can, right there, and then the bevel on the side is 40. Let's see, there's the 40 and 40. So I learned to turn quite a while ago, mainly by empirical. So when I learned about the 40/40, I really liked it because it to me allows a cleaner cut, in my opinion. Though there's benefits to, you know, a curved surface or a straight. And we'll get into that a little bit. Here's a more traditional grind, maybe, a spindle gouge. Has the fingernail grind. Use a jig to do that. And then here's my homemade skew, which has about it's a round tool steel with about a 70-degree skew angle, and then more of a little fatter bevel on it, right? So the included angle is upwards of 40, I think. So that allows me to get in the fatter angle, I think, makes it a little more forgivable, so it doesn't catch as easy as maybe a sharper skew. Yeah, so I find it personally easier to flip that around and do whatever I want with it. Somebody who's starting out with a skew might be a little harder to, you know, put that into space where you want it, right, without it catching. So in my benefit, I can just you'll see when I do the trunk part, I can just go in there and clean it up real easy. Okay. So I have, one more. This is a stub center. So it's got a bunch of teeth on the outside and a point that goes in and out, spring-loaded on the inside. So that allows me to, when I'm getting off-centered, it'll grab a lot of the wood without, you know, having, if you only had the 4-pronged, it wouldn't grab as well. So starting out with red cedar, which I think has a good Christmas look to it. I already got my centers marked, so I'm going to chuck it up. Boy, that has got a really pointy. That is really pointy. Let's see.
Give me that one.
I did not bring a. There we go.
So you don't want it too pointy so it doesn't split the wood, is that what you're?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking was that might be a little too much.
Tom, are you using a branch or a piece cut with the pith not in it?
Yeah, it's pretty knotty, so let's see. So the center of the tree would have been about right here, so maybe 6 to 8 inches.
Thanks.
Is that the question? I guess it's not a branch. Small tree.
But it doesn't have the pith running in the middle.
Does not have the pith in the middle, no. Which would be nice, then it'd be all red, but that's what I had, so.
Have you run them that way? You don't get any particular bad splitting from it?
No, no. This stuff dries pretty quick. And there'll be some splits, but not too bad. Some of the knots can be hard to deal with. So if you're starting out, you probably don't want, something like that. But you can deal with it. Okay, so I'm going to clean up the ends. Sorry. So I got my tool rest about, I want to be a little bit below center so that as I cut in with my 40-40, the point will be right at center. So the 40-40 is very good at cutting cross grain, so cutting like this. It's not the best, going parallel to the grain. Okay, so if you see my bevel is 90 degrees to the axis, right? So if I come in straight on and push to the point of the live center, I can quickly clean that up. And I'm going to put a reference line with a marker to help with the offset. So I'm just going to do this arbitrary. I'd say it's about maybe an inch in diameter. We'll do the same on the other side. And I can get rid of that little bit of knob from, I have a little hook knife here I like. So switching ends, and I'll do the same on this side. It's always interesting trying to figure out your muscle movements to your own lathe to something new. So that's about 2,300. Does that help to? There we go. So you can see my bevel is parallel. I bring it back. Push it in, get a nice clean cut. And come back and put a reference line. Okay, So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna use one plane. So the idea is to kind of offset these skirts, if you will, as you go along. And you could do that in 3 dimensions with more planes, right? You could move your dots around, as I'll show you on the ends. But I'll just stick to 2 or 1 plane. Try not to get too confusing. Okay, so on the end, I'm just going to draw a line or where it would intersect right between the centers. Everybody see that? Does it make sense? And then I'll flip it around, and I'm just going to guesstimate because it doesn't really matter. Do the same thing. So I'm going to be switching between these 3 points, or even in between, depending on how I adjust as it's rotating. So if you can picture that in your mind, keep that in your mind as we go along. So first order of business is to turn the base, and that's straight between straight between the axes. So the 2 center points. And I'm going to borrow your spindle roughing gouge. This one? So I'm going to taper this, as I want my tree to get a little bit smaller as it goes to the top, so I can kind of build that in with a taper. There's about 2,000 again. So start that taper. But I still want to leave quite a bit so I get my skirt length. So I'm going to stop about right there. Actually, I get pretty close to my circle already. I'm not tight, am I? Okay, so I'm going to start kind of an indent and curve that base a little bit, or make a bevel on it anyway. This is going to go in quite a bit. You see here, I'm starting the base of the first skirt. And I'm going to undercut it so that, you know, my skirt branches right as much as I can. I'm going to switch to that skew. I'm a little low here. So now I'm coming up about same height as the axes of the lathe. So I'm going to make that bevel on the base, and I'm leaving it pretty fat for 2 reasons. Number 1, I'm going to come back and clean up the bottom. And number 2, I'm putting a lot of pressure between axes. So if you make that base really thin at the beginning, it's bound to crack on you. So making the stump, and I'm going to clean up that base edge, just a parting cut. Might do that a couple of times, really thin get the smoothest cut I can. And then I'll come back and I can get more of a skew action, clean up this stump. So if that was a really sharp skew angle, you'd probably more inclined to catch it. And then with a detail gouge or the shallow gouge, I can get more of an undercut because my bevel or my handle's hitting over here. So as much as I can get, I can come back in here and undercut that. And clean it up. There we go. Okay, that all looks pretty clean. So I have my base, I got my trunk, and I have the bottom now of my first skirt. Okay, right here, and then now I can start doing multi-axes. So I'm going to show you first what it looks like with different arrangements, so you can see what's. So I'm going to keep my original axes, and I'm going to choose one of the opposite points up here. I'm going to go in a little bit because I'm afraid of splitting it. Got a little too close. So if I turn it on, you can see I don't have as much action up here. I got a lot here, so if I was to have started up here, my skirt would be really small, right? So you have to balance out as we go along. I'm going to adjust where it makes the most sense, if you will, right, for whatever location I'm on here. So if I flip it around and do both, or do one of the points on the base and use the center point on the top of the tree, you can see I get a lot of skirt action here, if you will, but it's not going to be very big in diameter, right? Because to get down to where it's round, they'd be almost gone. Yeah.
When you mark your lines across the center, where you're gonna put your centers in, did you try to get them parallel on each end when you lined up? Or did you,
I did not, and you know, I don't doing everything in a plane. It's not that big a deal. If you wanted to accentuate that, you could actually do 3 points and move around like this as you're moving your axes. I'm just keeping it in a one plane to simplify it. So here's the most offset on one axis, right? So looking at that, you can see I have a bigger turning diameter in the middle, less on either end. So keeping that in mind as we go along, I'm going to adjust. So I'm going to start maybe halfway and then use the full extent on the treetop. We'll see how that looks. So you can see I get some action here, but it's going to reduce my diameter enough that I won't have a skirt. So I like that. So when you get to doing this, you want to hand rotate, make sure you don't hit the tool rest, which is easy to do. I've knocked off more than one skirt that way. Okay, so everything is tight. I'm going to come back with the 40/40 gouge, and I'm just going to move in and make, the first skirt. How's that look on? Yeah, it looks different. Look different to you guys. Okay, there you can see I'm round here and not quite round at the base, so we'll come back and so I'm going to try and undercut the skirt. So as I get to the top of the skirt, I'm rolling my gouge over so the bevel is all the way rolled over. If I had it up, I would catch the side of the next skirt. Okay, things to look out for. You can see here it's a nice sharp edge. And then I get to the right here, can you see that? A little bit of a flat, so not quite done yet. And I can see where that is here. You probably can't, but it's about 1/8 of an inch. Okay, a little bit left. Also, the diameter here, you want to get fairly small because it has to fit under the next skirt, even because that's going to be offset. So if you leave it fat, it'll stick out on one little edge of the next skirt. So that's about 2,000. So try and get a nice curve in there. The mass of the 40/40 is nice to do that undercut out here where it's interrupted cut. Then I usually switch to the spindle gouge, which allows me to get in there a little more. Whoop. See. So we ruined that skirt. See if I can fix it. I think we can save that. Just a little bit left here. Okay, I'll usually just knock down this edge because it is pretty sharp and sometimes there's a little bit of frayed wood there. Now is kind of the time to do it easy. Okay, so there's the first one. Now if I go halfway on the base and do the opposite point, halfway the opposite direction, so I get a little bit of flare. And the reason I'm not doing all of it is I would lose diameter here. Though, as you saw before, if I go in the middle, I can probably do it. So let's try it. If you see the where it's going to end up, it's very close, so I'm going to go back.
So how many of these can you make in an hour?
I can't make 40. About 15 minutes. Okay. Happy with that, so I'm going to go further than I probably usually would just to clean that up. It'll have to do.
Accentuating that knot.
That was the problem, was the knot. So rolling that bevel over, I'm not going to go careful. You can see I got really close there. Okay, I'll speed things up here. So now I'm going to, since I'm moving closer to the top, I'm going to accentuate more on the bottom here and not as much on the top. So full distance here, half distance up here. Make sure you're not hitting. It helps if you have the lathe to be able to rotate it, but you can sit there by hand if you want to too, yeah. All right, I'm just gonna cut this short and make a finial now, top. I can still put a offset on it. Actually, I think it's too much. So I'm just going to go half. Boy, this is weird. So the skirt looks good. So I like to put a little ball on the top. Just gonna lower my rest a little bit so my point is right on the axis. Switch to the detail gouge and just roll a bead. There we go. I can just carve that off. And let's see, just a little trick to clean up the end, or the base. Is that knockout rod? It's hanging on the lathe. Got it. So 4-jaw check. And I have a little expendable with a hole in it. I have a little piece of liner, drawer liner.
You were just eyeballing your height of your branches, but do you have a ballpark
Yeah, well, you can play around with that too, because the bigger diameter you have of whatever you have, you can really accentuate. Um, so, and you can see these look, if you do go something taller, but that same diameter, you can see it's more like it's just this, as opposed to a skirt, so there's something with the length versus the diameter. And then, I think you gotta empirically look at it and can I do that? I've done some where I've tried, well, how far can I take this? And I can bend it out and come around. And I think, who was I talking to? Dave was, or maybe Tom had done that too. Tom Penninga. But it's like about 3/4 of the diameter, roughly. So just quickly, I'll clean up the base. Here, if my base is too thick, I can get rid of quite a bit of it. Okay, that's it. Part that off. Got there in the end.
All right, what I'm going to be doing, wow. that's
I got
loud,
it, keep talking, I got it.
Is a salt shaker. Matt Harbor did this on the Wednesday night Zoom meeting at the Worldwide Wood Turners. He made a straight one, and I'll probably make a straight one because it's less time. But I went on YouTube and seen this pear shape, and I liked it, so I made that. And the magic of it is the salt comes out down here. You don't tip it over. There's no hole. Okay? I'll pass it around. That's just a piece of maple that I had laying around. Okay. Instead of, there it is, doing a big one, I'm going to do a smaller one because I know people would like to go home today. And what I did is I've pre-drilled it 2 inches deep. It's a 1-inch drill. Now the centerpiece that's going to go in here is going to be a 1/4 inch shorter than that so the salt can get around it to come back in.
Pull the knob. Or twist the black one, then it's already out.
There we go. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hollow this out a little bit so there's room for the salt alongside the pin that goes in the middle. I already have one hole in my elbow from these things. Yeah. A little close. I'm going to leave a land on the bottom of it for the other piece to fit into. And all I'm doing is making clearance in there. There's no fussy dimensions anywhere other than the fact that you want this pin in there to be a 1/4 inch shorter so the salt can get around it. And you don't put any finish on the inside because of the fact that the salt will eat the finish up and then you'll plug it up. You know, just gonna true it up and just do a little shaping on it. It's just a 1/2 inch bowl gouge. All I'm doing right now is cutting some clearance so I can cut it off. And then a 3/8 detail gouge, spindle gouge. Just to get in there a little better. I'm just using a 1/2-inch skew to get down in there a little bit if I don't cause any havoc here on the end of it. I'm going to pull this back out of the way now. You can also do it with a parting tool, but I didn't bring one. Now I'm just going to straighten out the bottom of it. I'm creating a funnel on the bottom here because that's where you put the salt in. And I prefer a 3/32 drill. A lot of wobble on it. All right. Must have just a little nipple in there somewhere that's might make a difference if the drill's tight. Okay. And you want this to be a tight fit because it's gonna be tapped in and you don't want it falling out when you shake it. You will make a mess. Yeah. A little loose. In the metal shop, we always called it a Chicago fit. So you create some lines on it that seems to tighten it up considerably. Yeah, now it won't slide on. Now we're going to create the other end of it. And that's just a matter of removing a whole bunch of material. Whoa, that's good. It's a fast way of sharpening your tools. Wow. Just carving out the end of it a little bit here to get a little flatter there. That's all there is to it. Of course, if you're going to make one for use, you're going to want to do some sanding on it. But that's all there is to it. You just pour the salt in here and shake it around. The salt goes down, and when you want it back out, you just turn it upside down and shake it. That's a little loose.
All right. So that's it for our Christmas gifts demonstrations. Thank you, Ron and Tom and Tom and Tom.